The first design was almost certainly designed by a user. You can imagine one of our ancestors out on the Pleistocene who needed to get something out of the ground and conceived of fashioning a digging tool out of a stick. I've certainly designed things for myself as a user as well. For instance, when my youngest son was a toddler, I was concerned he wasn't growing at the right rate, and I wasn't very happy with the way they were measuring his height in the doctor's office. So I designed this tool for accurately measuring the height of my children. Later I learned that there are commercial devices called stadiometers that are designed to do just exactly that. Even though almost every designer has designed something for him or herself, most artifacts in our lives were designed by professionals. The separation between designers and users occurred probably thousands of years ago and occurred for two main reasons. The first is kind of simple, and the second is a little more complex. The first reason that designers and users became separated is that not every user has the expertise to design every artifact that he or she needs. For instance, a few years ago, I designed a house for my family. It's something I'd always wanted to do. Now, when I say I designed it, actually what I mean is I participated in the planning and design process. Because there's some specialized expertise required, I couldn't possibly design that house for myself in its entirety. So for instance, structural engineers were required to figure out how to design the roof so it wouldn't collapse under the large snow loads that it would be subject to. And architects were required to understand what the zoning and code requirements were to make sure the house satisfied the regulatory requirements. And they also brought to bear a particular aesthetic sensibility that I just didn't simply have. So even though I have some of the relevant expertise, and I'm a pretty well-educated engineer, I don't have all the expertise that was required for that task. And so I had to rely on experts to complete that design problem. The second reason that designers and users became separated is a little more subtle and has to do with the economies of scale that are required or that benefit production. For instance, a few years ago, I designed a scooter with my brother, and the first version of the scooter had a deck like this. And this is a deck that we designed and produced to be made from a 13 millimeter thick plate of aluminum. And then we used a machine tool to remove these pockets of material in order to make it reasonably lightweight. Now, if you're going to make just one scooter deck, this is a pretty good way to do it, and it'll cost you about $100 to make this part. Now, $100 is a lot for a scooter deck, and so when we went into production, we used a different process called die casting. And in die casting, a large metal mold describes the geometry of the part, and then a molding machine will squirt molten metal into that mold. It will then solidify and the part can be popped out. Once you get that machine up and running, it can produce hundreds or even thousands of parts quite economically. There's a catch though, which is that mold costs $50,000. So obviously we wouldn't use die casting to make just one part, but if we were going to make 10,000 parts, then the cost of that mold would be relatively insignificant, about $5 per piece. And when combined with the materials and processing costs, could result in a part cost of about $20 instead of $100. So the economies of scale in production give us a tremendous advantage as long as we can find 10,000 other people to share our design. So in order to take advantage of economies of scale in production, institutions emerged, usually companies, that understood the needs of a large set of users, pooled their interests, created a single design, and then used economical production processes such that all those people could enjoy low-cost production. Now, that advantage of economies of scale in production comes with a substantial design challenge, which is a professional designer now has to understand vicariously the needs of a large population of users other than him or herself. That central challenge of how to understand users that are not you will be the focus of our next few modules.